How would you describe the State of the Union?
I think the State of the Union is strong. We live in an extraordinarily challenging world, and I hope the President will make a strong case tonight that we need to stand with democracies around the world against authoritarian forces. That plays out the most in terms of not deserting our allies in Ukraine. It would be a historic mistake to walk away, and I hope we could convince the Speaker, because I think we get 300 votes in the House to push back against Russian aggression. I hope he'll lay out both a path towards a hostage deal, but also I'm glad to hear that he is going to announce at least additional humanitarian aid for Palestinians in Gaza, and the potential of building right off the beach there, a facility where we could bring aid from Cyprus over. I think on the domestic front, the economy's got a lot of wind in its sails. I mean, no other country in the world has managed to bring down inflation without going into a recession. We've got stock market all-time high, unemployment all-time low, wages are up, but there's still a lot of folks who feel inflation's too high. So what else he can do on bringing down inflation, I think, will be a key point. And I think at the end of the day, the recognition that many of us have, that regardless of party, that in many ways our democracy is at stake. And there may be some who may not agree with all of the president's policies, but he does not upset rule of law. He understands that we live in a system where we have to compromise, and unfortunately some folks, some of his biggest potential opponent doesn't seem to have that approach.
I think you saw all my questions and
I think you got
answered
it
all in one time.
all in one
so
bite.
Let me dissect it a little
okay.
bit. Let's go to the economy. The numbers on paper look pretty good in a lot of areas, but people are not feeling it. So how do you resolve that?
Yeah.
What does he need to do?
I think, if you look over the last couple of months, consumer confidence is getting better, but people still not feeling enough. The biggest component is housing and shelter costs. I'd love to hear some things about first-time homebuyer initiatives, how we can again try to bring down inflation in the housing sector, because frankly, if you cut out housing inflation, the rest of inflation is even below the 2% piece. I think as well, the president needs to give an optimistic view of what else can come to pass. The guest I'm bringing tonight is somebody who has a rural campground in Louisa County, Virginia, whose business is prospering now because he got broadband. I mean, if we don't get 98% of all Americans with affordable broadband in the next couple of years, it won't be lack of money. We put up plenty of money. It'll be failure of execution. So, playing on some of these stories where people's lives have been improved, whether it be broadband, whether it be, I got a daughter who's a type 1 diabetic, we've seen the cost of her insulin get capped at $35 a month. More of those stories, I think, will help, improve them. Let's face it, most people, not just in America, but in the world, are a little bit grumpy at this point because of, I think the kind of overwhelming amount of social media and technology-driven change, and I think, it's incumbent upon the president to make the case that, hey, things are going to get better. I got the numbers to prove it, but more importantly, it's going to, specific improvements to your life, and I think those things like broadband deployment or bringing cost of drugs down like insulin are tangible examples.
There's a recent Gallup poll saying that one of the frustrations among Americans is they don't think government is getting anything done, that they're not working to. How do you resolve that, especially in an election?
I know it's like, I've been in this job 15 years. 2 years ago, when we did the infrastructure bill, when we brought semiconductor manufacturing back to this country on the CHIPS bill, when we passed the Electoral Count Act to make sure the shenanigans that happened on January 6th wouldn't happen again, when we passed the biggest increase in veterans assistance in years, that was a couple years ago, but many of those programs are still rolling out. I do think things are getting done, but if people aren't feeling it, it doesn't matter what politicians in Washington say, and that's why I think things like the consumer confidence, like people actually getting hooked up to broadband, where families like mine who've got a kid with diabetes that sees their insulin costs go down the more we can lay out those kind of tangible examples, the better for the president.